Well, I appreciate the distinction that there are emotional moments for me as an actor, and then there are emotional moments for Alucard as a character. And of course, my goal, first and foremost, is to make sure that the audience has a good experience, and so that I portray Alucard's emotional moments to the best of my ability. It's more important that Alucard have a good emotional moment than I do, right? Because I'm not going in there for my own emotional satisfaction. I'm going in there to do a job as an actor and make sure that others can have a wonderful emotional experience. For me, well, let's talk about Alucard first, I guess. If I had to have the most emotional moment for Alucard, I think it would have to be in episode 8, where we finally get to see Alucard as himself when he was the Count. When we see him as the Count of Wallachia, when we see him in his sort of Transylvanian guise, and we see him kneel to his lady and pet his servant, that to me, I think, was the most honestly sincere, vulnerable, emotional moment I had seen of Alucard's, where he's not fighting, he's not trying to rip anyone apart, he's not eager to get into battle. He's simply relating to the two women, frankly, who are the most important in his life. And I think that was an amazing moment to be able to have that transparent a moment with his character. It's probably the moment where he is the most human. For me, as an actor, as playing Alucard, there are moments when I go, wow, that's where we're going? Okay, here we go. And I think one of the ones that sort of sticks in my head is when Alucard is fighting Tubal-Cain Alhambra, and at one point he really toys with him, and at one point he just starts literally ripping him to pieces. And they've been playing with this idea that Alhambra's gonna make him squeal like a pig, and Alucard sort of wants to turn it around on him. And there's a moment where it's like the sort of killing blow where he's going at Alhambra, and he tells him to squeal like a pig. And there was a moment of, for me as an actor, I had to get to such a unvarnished, raw emotional place in order to deliver that line with believability, that when we finally got it, it was very satisfying to me, because I was like, yes, I buy that. And then from that moment on, there's this madness that starts in Alucard, because in the eating of Alhambra, he's able to understand that his opponent is now Millennium, that Montana Max is the one behind all of this, and that this will not end until there is a battle of armies on the level of the Bhagavad Gita. We're, on the level of the battle that happened 500 years ago in Wallachia when he was fighting the Sultan and was impaling all of the Sultan's troops up on spikes. I mean, he suddenly realizes it's going to be that level of bloodbath, that level of sort of sublime destruction. And that madness that kicks into him there, I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. Because it's the awakening to the possibility of total obliteration and destruction, and the joy of that experience, that for me was probably the most emotional moment as an actor.
The normal challenges. There's the historical aspect, because this is an interesting show. A lot of anime does this, I'll say, but this was one. This is very particular for Hellsing on certain levels, that it borrows very lightly chunks of Western culture that I have to. It borrows chunks of Western culture very lightly, I suppose is the way to put it. There's little hints and vague touches of ephemera of things like the Rosicrucians, the Knights of Malta, the Freemasons, the Templars, the Catholic, Protestant divides of Europe, and of course the history of Dracula, and even historical vampire fiction, and it very lightly touches on these things in ways that don't really matter to a Japanese audience, but I know would matter to a Western audience. And so I had to dig really deep and spend an awful lot of money on very expensive books. Well, I didn't have to. I chose to spend a lot of tax-deductible money on very expensive books to research this and to sort of pick the little bits that we wanted to highlight, like things like the seal that's on Alucard's glove. I mean, it was important for us to know what that was and what that was for and how that worked, and knowing that that the script that's around it is Theban, and you should know that that's Theban and what Theban was used for and why it's on the glove. Or on his coffin is a quote, sometimes misquoted quote from the Ripley scroll, which was a alchemical scroll found in Sir Isaac Newton's private library. There's actually several copies. I have a photocopy of one, and so sometimes. One of those interesting things is we'd hit a piece of scripting where the timing and the tempo was all off, and we couldn't use, the Japanese would use a piece of English, but they would use far more flap than what they had. They would say something like 4 words and use 15 pieces of flap, and we'd be staring, going, "Oh God!" And one of the things that we would do is we would have incantation pieces, and we could actually just pull from the scroll of Ripley and find a piece that was appropriate from the actual scroll that's originally quoted, and then that gets used as sort of as an addition to some of the mystical spells, is actually pulling from the original sources, because we knew them and we found them and we had them. Accents are really difficult. Most people don't actually even know what good accents sound like. We got an awful lot of flack we got weirdly more flack for our real accents than we did for our fake ones when it first came out. And I certainly have learned a lot about accents and all the different kinds of English accents and the different kinds of Scottish and Welsh and every accent out there. And that was a very specific and difficult decisions of what the characters should each sound like. The fans for the show are I say rabid. They are rabid fans, and they have demands. They don't necessarily know what they're demanding, but damn, do they demand it. And I'd like to think that I do my best to deliver, and I'd like to think so far that we've kept everyone pretty pleased. And I won't guarantee, I can't guarantee what you're going to hear, but whatever it is, it always has to be kind of totally out there and off the wall and kind of crazy. So.
Start with doing stage work. To be an actor, you have to be a theatre actor. I know that probably flies in the face of what every film actor thinks. I believe it is the basis of all acting. You learn how to speak, and speak forcefully. You have to speak to the 44th row, remember. You are working with other actors who are more seasoned typically than you are, and you can learn from them. And you start to develop an instinct with character and how to make a character interesting. How to, without being excessive, without being weird. It has to blend with the piece, after all. You can't just be weird for the sake of being weird, not at all. But you start to develop an instinct to create a character that is watchable, interesting, dynamic, authentic. So, get some stage experience. Now, in addition to that, make a voice reel, and that's very easily done. You can take half a dozen little things from Reader's Digest or magazines and book a studio for an hour. It costs $75, $100, $150. You book an hour of recording time and then an hour of the engineer's editing time, and maybe he'll add effects or noises or music under. And then suddenly you have a 1-minute reel, which will launch you into the world of doing voice work generally. Then you become more known because you have possibly a voice agent, maybe not, but maybe you do. And you start responding to breakdowns, asking for voice actors for anime, animation, any kind of voice work. And you go and audition, and you don't get a lot of it, but you get some of it. And that's what's important. You get some of it. And more to the point, you're doing stuff, you're trying, and you're getting out there in the market. It's really essential that you do. Don't think about it anymore. Make a reel. Have fun with your friends. Get a microphone out. Practice. Try different voices. You can do all sorts of fat voices, or afraid, things that are a little afraid, or you don't know what you're feeling. So also just practice, and then suddenly you discover, wow, I can play that guy. Ooh, maybe I should audition for that. And suddenly you are, and then you're more confident because you've done some acting work, some stage work, or some film work. Always my instinct is towards the stage. You've done some voices, you've got some voices on tape that you can show people, have people listen to. And you're booking, and you're more confident, and you're getting better. And then you hang around with better people still, and then you start, everything is getting improving. And you take more interest in it, and you start listening to how good the good people are and what they do and their little tricks. And then you start becoming a more accomplished actor and voice actor, or actress and voice actress. That's my best advice, but please do. A lot of people say, oh, I want to do this. And then they didn't actually do anything. So get out there and do stuff. Do some stage work, develop your acting skills. That'll transfer into your voice skills. Practice your voice work anyhow you can. Get into the studio, record any kind of demo, anything you really like. Typically 1 minute, nothing longer than that. You can have one that's more serious, you can have one that's more commercial, you can do another that's just for anime or animation. And then suddenly you've got something, a real tool that the market needs from you to get work, to really book work. I mean, I think I started doing voice work in just that way. There's no special trick to it. Walter is kind of a cool cucumber. He's not one of your overly excitable characters. He just isn't. That's his nature. He is calm. He's ordered. He gets the job done. He provides solutions. He's there as the, shall we say, the administrative mainstay of the family. He's always somewhat in the background. He's the guy they call upon to arrange things or fix things or come up with some solution or participate in that. So I don't think Walter is one of your more emotional characters. That said, there are moments where he lets rip. And I think he does when he, as I mentioned earlier, when he is unveiling his new weaponry. And that excites him. So there's a little frisson of joy underneath all of that. And when he springs into action and starts killing people, which is what he does with some glee as well. It's like he's in some ways like a boy in a grown man's body. It's like, oh, can I go and kill some people now? Oh, really? Oh, goody! Yes! It's been a few years now. Oh, I can't wait. Oh, wonderful. So, yes, there's moments where he suddenly sort of gets excited and it's a thrill and he's right in the thick of it and he's back to his old habits. He's back to his old skill set of being the eliminator. But most of the time, Walter's a kind of provides solutions, does what he needs to quietly, kind of a calm force that the family depends on and relies on to be that person. I mean, any butler's not a bundle of excitement and joy. He's the calm person you go to when you have a problem, and he solves it. And every now and then, the little boy can play. And that's when Walter gets a little excited. And there are these moments which are very fun, where Walter adjusts from being all, I am the voice of calm, and administration, sophistication, and experience, to when he goes, yeah! Yeah.
have to go with Saris. I'd have to say that if I was watching it for the first time, I would just automatically see the storyline through her perspective. I think, not that I'm long-legged blonde with huge breasts and carry a gun and et cetera, et cetera. I'm rather petite and I'm a brunette and I'm just petite and I don't like guns. But there's something emotionally like her that I feel, again, like since we started and then we've evolved, the storyline has evolved and the character has evolved, I feel like I was really insecure for a long time. I think each of us, we're in this inner battle of love and fear. And I think when you love, you're just like, you're confident, you love yourself, you love the world, you're fearless, you're doing what you love with your life, and you're okay living your truth, and you've chosen a path of confidence. And I think it's really easy and very encouraging by our society to live in fear. You're fearful of doing the wrong thing, of driving too fast, of spending too much money, of not being able to pay rent. You're scared of what if I get rejected, and I was told I wasn't good at that when I was young. What if I'm not good at that, and what if people don't like me? There's so much to be scared of in this world. I'm not saying that they're authentic fears. I think they're false fears that are created and installed into our minds. But I do feel like there's so much that one can feel intimidated about in the human life experience. And I think that Sarah starts out rather timid and unsure, and she kind of stepped back a lot. Like, she kept stepping back, and she was a little skittish and somewhat unsure of herself, and she knew why she was there, and she had it in her all along. That seed of strength was in her from the get-go. But as far as really believing in herself and having the confidence to put herself out there and fight, I think it was a journey. It took a while. It took practice, and it took enough life experience where she was like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, I'm not going to keep letting this happen where I keep getting pushed around. Like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it right, and I'm strong, and I'm going to fight back. And I feel like I spent a long time in my youth just being afraid and timid and insecure and not sure about my body and not sure if I was good enough, and I didn't know if what I had to say was of importance, and I was just timid and a lot like Sarah started out. And as the longer you live life, ideally for all of us, we realize like there's really nothing to be afraid of. If there's something you love to do, there's no one and no thing that should ever stop you. If there's something that you feel you're good at or that you enjoy doing that makes you happy, you really have to just kind of block out everyone else and everything else and go for it. And if it's, being an officer or a vampire or a, whatever it is that you want to put yourself toward, like her, she had to finally come to this realization that I'm not scared anymore. And I don't know that it was I don't know that it happened like one day she wasn't scared and then finally, or one day she was scared and finally she wasn't scared. I think it's just kind of an evolution, like with life, you just kind of slowly evolve into, you morph into, your true character, which ideally isn't afraid and is living the truth. Ideally, we are living our truth and embracing our strength, the way that Sarah embraces her strength.
That's actually a really interesting question, because around the same time as I first got my first episode of Hellsing, I was going through having just discovered that my son, who was a year old, was profoundly deaf. So I would be coming in and doing all of this stuff using my voice and you know, dealing with the fact that my son might never hear me. And of course, that's not the case, because he then ended up getting a cochlear implant and he's doing great. He can hear me fine. But if I go back 10 years to when he was a year old, I would sometimes be at the John Tracy Clinic, which is where he went, dealing with this beautiful little baby who, before he had his operation and everything, couldn't hear a thing I was saying. So I would be coming in some days from the John Tracy Clinic, which is where my son was going through schooling and learning how to become auditory. So we were doing a lot of exercises like talking and talking and talking. And, you know, the irony was not lost on me that I would then be going into a recording studio and, you know, recording voiceovers. And that I do remember some very emotional moments during that period, which, anyway, everything's good now, but definitely an emotional touch point.
We ruin the countries we govern and the people in our care. We slaughter our enemies and sacrifice all our allies. We'll keep killing till there's nothing left but to destroy ourselves. It will never be enough. We are incorrigible warmongers, aren't we, Major?